Now in this episode we are going to be doing two things. First of all, we are going to set up our environmental variables, and then after that we are going to take the list that we created in the previous episode and link each of the items of that list to their details page. So when you click on it, you will actually get the blog post that you're after. Okay, so first of all, we want to set up our environmental variables. Now, why do we want to do that? Well, as you can see right here, we are fetching some data from our API. Now, that API can change during the development, which might not be so probable, but what will actually be 100% probable is when you put this site on the internet, this should definitely change, because you can't get to your API on your working application through your local host, right? So you will definitely have to change this. So instead of changing every instance of this that you will have in your application, and you can have it multiple times, you are going to actually just change the data in the .env variables, files, not variables, right? You are going to have one env file for your servers, for your online version of the application, and you're going to have one .env file for your local development, which I'm going to show you how to do today. So first of all, we are going to install something called Sapper environment. So you do in your Sapper directory, you just do npm install Sapper environment. Okay, so once this is installed, you have access to it. Now, to have access to your environmental variables, you need to go to your rollup config.js file. And first of all, in here, you would need to import Sapper environment. So import Sapper environment from Sapper environment, and then you want to destructure that right here. So you would just do Sapper env, and that's about it. So your configuration is done. Now what we need to do, we need to create .env file that we are going to put in the root of our application. So I'm going to create it like this. Okay, edit, and then in that file we wanna add our API URL, right? So to do that, while using Sapper environment, you actually have to prefix your environmental variables with Sapper app. So you would do something like, let me make this bigger. So Sapper app API URL, and API URL is going to be equal to, so if we go to post lists, I can just copy all of this right here, put it here, Sapper API.localhost wp-json. Of course, this can be different for you. Save this. Now we have our environmental variable set. Now we can go to the post list.svelte and access that variable. And to access that variable, you would write something like const API URL is equal to process.env.sapper app API URL. Sapper app API URL, okay. And now right here, instead of actually calling this and hard coding it, you would just do something like, let me just put this into template literal. So okay, and I'm going to cut this. I'm sorry, when I write those backticks, PHP Storm does weird things. So actually what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to copy this out. I don't know why that's happening. It's probably because of my keyboard or something like that. But when I start typing, it just does weird shit, and then nothing works. Right? Okay, so you would write something like this: API URL WP v2 posts. Great. Let's save this, and then we are going to run our application. Okay, let's test it out. And this seems to be working, right? So we are actually getting our links from, our link to the API URL from our environmental variable. And of course, you don't have to use the .env file just for storing your URLs. You can store a lot of different things in it. For example, you can store your Google ID for your Google Analytics, and you can store there that kind of stuff. Also, you will need to store stuff that is different between your local environment and your online or production environment, right? That's what .env variables and files are usually used for. Okay, so that's it. We have set up our .env file, and now we can go and actually go to our application and link this here. So these posts right here to an actual post in our application using the slugs. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to go to src routes and create a new directory and a file in that directory called slug.svelte. So I'm going to create a directory called articles, and I'm going to create a file called square bracket slug square bracket svelte, right? Okay, so we have this slug.svelte file. Okay, so what does this mean? This means that we are getting our posts via slug, right? If you were getting the posts via ID, then you would call this file id.svelte. So this is our dynamic route. Of course, you don't want to have manual routes for every one of your articles, because you can have thousands of articles, right? So we are creating this slug.svelte file, which is going to get which is going to display all of our posts or post details, right? So first of all, I'm going to open up script tag, make this bigger. And I'm going to set context to be module. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to define our API URL just like we did before. So this is going to be our API URL because we are going to connect to that post via slug, so we can actually display it. Then we're going to export function preload, close this up. And in it, I'm going to define const response. Pretty much this is almost the same code as we have in our post list.svelte file. So this is going to be await this.fetch. And now we want to fetch this. I'm copying this again because of those backticks. So what does this say? We are using API URL WP v2 posts. Then we are getting the parameter called slug. We are getting the posts via slug. So let me just show you that. So this is our API, Sapper API, WP-JSON, WP-v2 posts. Okay. So now if we wanna access a single post, we can of course do the ID. So let me just see 13. So if I do 13 right here, then I will get just one post called something like this, right? Or this. Great. But if I wanna access the posts via slug, I can just do this slug is equal to hello world. And now I will get the post with the ID of 1. So this is our hello world post. Okay, so that's why are we connecting to our API in that way. Of course, this is our API URL, slug, and then slug is, we are getting the slug also dynamically from our params, because we define this as slug. In our params, we are going to get the slug that we click on, right? Which I'm going to show you a little bit later when we link all of those posts right here to this slug.svelte file. Okay, so let's continue. Right, so we defined our res or our response. Then we want to define our data. Okay, I see that this is not supposed to be here. Then we want to just say return post is data 0. Why am I returning it like this? You will see a little bit later, because we are actually going to get an array, and then in that array we are going to get the object of our actual post. So we want to access the first object in that array, and this is going to be our post, right? So down here we open up another script tag, and in it we just export that post. So I'm just going to do export let post, and that's about it. Also, I actually think, yeah, that's it. Great. Now let's just see if this works. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to console log this data right here. Save this, go to our browser. And now, because we put this in articles, our URL should be articles hello world. Now, sometimes this doesn't work from the first try, so let's check it out. We actually didn't get anything. Maybe if I just, but we also didn't get any errors, which is also good. And maybe if we console log the post right here. Okay, this works from the first time. I had trouble, a little bit of trouble while preparing for this. I did everything like in here, but Sapper just didn't pick it up, right? Quote unquote. So as you can see, this is the data that we are currently getting for this page. Okay, so only thing that is left is to just display that data. So first of all, I'm just going to display the title. Okay, so we are displaying the title, and now in the content div, I'm going to display the HTML of that content. So to do that, you just do HTML, because we are getting the data with HTML in it. So I'm just going to do post.content.rendered. Okay, save this, check our page out. Okay, so this is our hello world and welcome to WordPress and so on. So this is our first post. Of course, if we go to home, we still can't link to any of these posts. We can't go to them because this currently isn't a link. So to correct that situation, we are going to go to our post list. So posts list, and in here I'm just going to delete all of this and just do it again. So li, I'm going to open up an a tag with rel equals prefetch. So as it says in the documentation, if you use this, then the server is going to prefetch the data while you're hovering over this link, right? So it's going to prepare the data before the user has even clicked it. So if we can do that prefetch right here, and then we are going to say articles articles, and then post slug. Okay, so we are getting the slug. This is why we use this params right here. And this is why we call this the slug, this file. So we are getting the slug from the parameters that we are sending right here. Okay, and then this is going to be an anchor link around post title rendered. Okay. And that should be it actually. Let's save this, go to our browser. As you can see, these are all links now, and if I click on something like this, I'm going to get that post. As you can see, this works very fast. You go back, click on this one, you get the details page of that post and so on. Of course, this needs a bit of styling, but as you can see, the functionality is pretty much there. You're getting the images also and everything that you would get from that post. Okay, so we did everything we set out to do for this episode. We set up our environmental variables, we linked our post list to the post detail page, so we are done for today. Just remember, everything we did here will be available for you on GitHub. The link would be in the description below. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.